Marina, a resilient single mother, faces a director's snub when denied entry to her daughter's school party. But when the director sees who picks up the little girl, a surprising revelation changes everything. Welcome back to Tales Tracks. I am excited to share a new story with you. Let's get started. The midday sun generously flooded the half-empty schoolyard with its rays. It was only a break, and the few latecomers were hastily trying to make up for lost seconds, crowding around the front door in a futile attempt to get inside all at once. Mr. Leonard, I hope we finally understood each other. A well-groomed, well-dressed woman of about 35 tried to smile as charmingly as possible at the school principal. We are still a parental trio, having a certain circle of communication with our own, let's say, conventions. I have nothing against poor people. I even try to participate in charity projects of various kinds, but a photo shoot was ordered for the matinee, and if we rented a suitable suit for the girl ourselves, we can no longer deal with her mother's image. I really hope for your professionalism and tact. A narrow, snow-white envelope filled with crisp bills slipped unnoticed into the principal's pocket, and he bowed gallantly to the visitor. Don't worry, everything will be fine. But as soon as the woman turned her back to him, hurried toward the parked car, the principal's eyebrows drew together, forming a deep furrow. Where did you come from? Dissatisfied thoughts swarmed in the principal's head. You see, their mother is not prestigious and does not suit them. How can I isolate her? Tell me, please. She considers every one of her daughter's morning parties to be almost the main event of her life. And why should the principal act as a doorman, allowing only those who have passed through a strict check? Everyone comes into this world naked, barefoot, and alone, and leaves here the same way. And I have to break this comedy because they are, you see, important people, and they sponsor the school. I need to talk to Smith delicately. Damn them. All these aristocrats in the first generation. He walked heavily into his office. Katie Smith's mother was just about to come for her daughter's reference today. Marina approached the school almost running. She managed to escape from the office only for an hour. It's good that the school is 2 stops away. She can make it. She almost flew up the steps of the porch and rushed towards the principal's office. Mr. Leonard, did I make it? Forgive me for being in a hurry, but I barely managed to escape. Come in, Smith. I just signed a reference. The principal handed Marina a densely written sheet of paper and added, Sit down for a minute. I won't keep you. Marina obediently plopped down on a chair, perplexed. Here's the thing. They expect me to solve this question delicately, but as it turns out, I don't always know how to be delicate. In general, the situation is as follows. Your parental trio, who financially support all the cool events and more, wants to make a photo shoot out of the matinee. And they, you see, need the contingent to be appropriate. They dress the children in suits. But some parents, according to their concepts, don't pass in style. And I, an old stump waiting for them to pay for the computer class, have to ask you to look at this whole ball, like Cinderella, from a distant window. The principal loudly cracked his fingers in anger, and Marina, turning pale, rose from her chair. Don't worry so much, Mr. Leonard. I understand everything. What can you do? That's how life is now. Lopsided. I understand that you can always insist on your own. There will be a video recording, right? The principal nodded silently. I'll do everything as it should be. I'll tell Katie that they didn't let her leave work. It's almost true. The boss is opening a new sales area, and everything needs to be scribbled down there. It's already the end of the year, but next year, you never know. Something might change. The principal wearily sank into a chair. Forgive me, old man. I couldn't help you. You are not the kind of person, Marina, to have people draw circles in front of you. The woman nodded, raised her clenched fist in a call to hold on and not give up, and slipped out of the office. Tears stubbornly welled up in her eyes. The late Boris appeared before her mind's eye, smiling with white teeth and promising. Never be afraid, girls. You won't get lost with me. It was really impossible to get lost with him. Boris served as a ranger in a large forestry. He was not afraid of animals, people, or bad weather. He was always cheerful, resourceful, and infinitely reliable. Yes, it was impossible to disappear with him. He disappeared himself. He did not return from another round, and 3 days later they found his body with a poacher's bullet lodged right in his heart. 200 meters away from him, they found a body of a roe deer with a fawn. The crime received great resonance. All the local media wrote about it. But it did not help the investigation in any way. The culprits were never identified. Marina was still overcome with strong tremors at the mere thought that the killer of her husband was most likely living a prosperous life now, partying with friends and still going to illegal hunting parties, sleeping peacefully at night. If Boris were alive now, who would dare to say that he, weathered by the prickly winds, tan, strong, and real, maybe doesn't match someone there? But with Boris's death, life changed dramatically. Giving a big crack, it was necessary to urgently look for work in the city. There was no decent one to be found, and the cleaning lady in the shopping center spoils the entire facade of the gentleman. Marina ran to work on time, and with some kind of desperate frenzy began to scrub the new trading floor. This, of course, increased labor productivity, but it didn't make her soul feel any better. Yes, it seems that we have Stakhanovite methods in use, came from behind a mocking voice. Marina turned around sharply and saw Mr. Johnson, the owner of the company, who had come to personally check the progress of the work. "Why are you chewing snot?" Marina said sharply, wringing out the rag. "You're giving us results ahead of schedule." The chief's gaze became serious and focused. His life experience was quite sufficient to feel that Marina was on edge. "Who offended you?" he asked briefly. "You asked to go to your daughter's school in a completely different mood." "I saw." Marina, backed up against the wall, couldn't stand it any longer and sniffling, told about the blatant school injustice. "So that's how it is." Mr. Johnson's eyes lit up with crazy and angry lights. "I wonder who are these important people who are embarrassed by my cleaning ladies, and what were they doing in the recent past? Has the party started already?" "It will start in half an hour," Marina answered, still not quite understanding what the boss was getting at. "Stella?" The secretary immediately took the phone. "Stella? You haven't taken home that cocktail dress you wore yesterday yet." "Here." "Great. You rent it for a couple of hours to one of our employees. She'll be coming in now. In half an hour I'll be waiting for you in the car." He turned to Marina. "To be honest, I didn't understand anything," she admitted. "What didn't you understand?" Mr. Johnson's eyebrows rose in displeasure. "You and I are going to the matinee to your daughter. You can take the dress from Stella. I really want to see who will find my dress unprestigious. I can't stand snobs." He summed up and energetically strode towards the exit. The matinee had already begun when Marina and Mr. Johnson, trying not to make noise, carefully entered the hall and settled down in the back rows. The woman's sharp gaze, who had been talking to the principal that morning, shot in their direction, and her neighbor received a noticeable nudge from the elbow. "Nina, just look at this impudent woman. She showed up with some guy, and she even got hold of an interesting dress somewhere. And this is against the principal's will and our financial aid. How can this be understood?" The fair-haired girl next to her narrowed her nearsighted eyes. "Well, with some. That's Emma Wilkinson's fiancé. We met them at the club last week." "Emma?" Her interlocutor's eyes widened almost twice. "And what is this groom doing in the ranks of the lumpen proletariat, enjoying the contrast? A fine goose, nothing to say. A profitable match and silent passion. Got everywhere." Other spectators hissed at them, not wanting to exchange a children's concert for idle gossip. And the friends had to keep quiet. And the concert, by the way, brought a lot of applause. turning into a standing ovation. The children tried hard, and it was clear from their performances that the artistic director Mary Ruse also tried her best. Katie was a miracle. How beautiful in a soft pink dress, embroidered with sequins, and the old Italian song Felicita, sung in a duet with Paul Taylor, was a great success. "Mommy, did you like it? Did you really like it?" she asked passionately. Marina, fiddling with the edge of her dress in excitement. "Well, of course, my dear. What could there be to doubt?" Marina smiled happily, and Mr. Johnson summed it up briefly. "Queen, let's go celebrate your success at the ice cream parlor. The car is waiting." Under the predatory gaze of Nina and Emma, all three climbed into the shiny dark red car, quickly disappearing around a corner. "It seems it's time to call my namesake," Emma unkindly narrowed her eyes after them. Marina, having woken up, was in no hurry to get out of bed, savoring what was left over from yesterday's post-holiday mood. The day that started yesterday so badly ended in the best possible way. When Marina came to work at this trading company, she heard from the staff more than once that the boss was their man. Although strict, he was fair and correct. Now she had to see for herself from her own experience. Katie had a real holiday yesterday, sitting in a cafe and looking at the shining eyes of her daughter, listening to her twittering voice and watching her inspiredly get dirty with chocolate without noticing it at all. Marina remembered her best days with Boris, and this made her feel languid, and the heart ached sweetly. Mr. Johnson, it seemed, entered the role of a good wizard, joked, fooled around, and played along with Katie in everything. After the cafe, he brought them home by car. Marina hugged a pillow, savoring pleasant memories. It's good that today is Saturday, and she doesn't have to go to work, and her daughter to school. It is possible to continue the celebration a little, but it was not possible to continue the celebration. The doorbell cut through the silence so unexpectedly and demandingly that Marina didn't even immediately realize what it was ringing her doorbell. Since moving to this city after Boris's death, she has had virtually no visitors. And where would they come from? Did something happen again? But to whom? Marina emerged from under the blanket and, buttoning her robe as she went, hurried to open the door while growing cold from unpleasant premonitions. A completely unfamiliar person was discovered behind the door. Marina saw a rather beautiful girl with a well-groomed and capricious face, looking at her mistress with disdain and anger. "Well, what did he see in you?" Without saying hello, she blurted out. "Who?" Marina stared at the guest with uncomprehending eyes. "Don't play the fool here," the girl interrupted her sharply. "Mr. Johnson took you and your foster child around the cafes yesterday. And are you still playing tricks on me? I know that rich Pinocchios are sometimes drawn to poor people like you, but don't get your hopes up too much. Mr. Johnson is my fiancé, and our wedding is in a month, so back off quietly, independently, and quickly. Otherwise I will grind you into dust. And so that you do not doubt that I am quite capable of this, you will receive greetings from your landlady today. If this is not enough for you, I will go and show films in other directions." With these words, the stranger bared her teeth predatorily, and, yanking the door from her side, loudly slammed it shut, miraculously not hitting Marina on the forehead. "The miracles are over. The surprises have begun," she said sadly. Marina thought as she headed to the bathroom to get herself in shape under the streams of cold water. The landlady really didn't keep us waiting. The phone rang as soon as Marina came out of the shower. "Marina?" Her voice was a little embarrassed and tense. "Marina, in light of the new circumstances, I am forced to double your rent. Twice." Marina couldn't believe her ears. "Your price was, frankly speaking, not the lowest. My price will remain the same." In her voice the hostess felt genuine bitterness. "I was greedy by not concluding an agreement with you for official rent, and now I'm paying for it. I'll have to pay half the amount for the fact that the tax office will still not be aware of my additional income." So this witch will even make money on this. Marina gasped to herself, as they say, speechless with indignation. I wonder what would be better, to endure and cry over the failed matinee or to have such problems now. Marina thought to herself as she prepared her daughter's favorite oatmeal with raisins and honey for breakfast. Katie loved this dish cold and thickened, so it was necessary to hurry so as not to starve the daughter. Although, what's the point of guessing now? How it happened. That's how it happened. I wonder if Mr. Johnson will also fall into your lap, so to speak, as a science, that no good deed goes unpunished. Desperate anger was boiling inside. The brain was feverishly looking for a way out of the financial impasse. But there was no way out. Marina was already pulling 1.5 rates, and the salary in the company was at a decent level. She won't find a higher-paying job without connections and patronage, and the workload is already greater. There was nowhere to increase it. She was already struggling to provide Katie with a good education and school with the hope of eventually bringing her into society. On Monday, the office greeted Marina with bustle and new chaos. Mr. Johnson was grim and sullenly wandering around with a concerned look. It's all because of me, Marina concluded and tried to quickly leave to clean the warehouse, so as not to remind the boss once again with her appearance of the troubles that had befallen him because of her. I wonder why he's still not married. He's not a boy anymore, the uninvited thoughts in her head asked. For some reason, the mop and vacuum cleaner did not disperse the thoughts. Maybe this is not the first marriage, and the young lady is not quite sure of herself. Why would she, a young and attractive person, rush to some cleaning lady to sort things out with her and also to weave low-grade intrigues? Something is not quite right here. After Boris's death, Marina's search for hidden motives and secret intentions took on a somewhat heightened character, and she could do nothing about it. Thinking in this way and wielding a mop, Marina had almost reached the exit from the warehouse, and deciding to take a break, glanced at the street. The picture that met her eyes was impressive. Right at the exit, the boss's car, which had become so familiar, was standing there, and a recent guest was getting into it with a very displeased but nevertheless with a skillfully painted face. Mr. Johnson was fiddling with the front door and looked both angry and slightly guilty. Well, look at that. The burdock plague. Lena's partner's displeased voice came from behind him. No, this infection will not bring the owner to good. And who is this? Pretending that she saw the girl for the first time, asked Marina. The bride, if you will. Lena snorted. Read between the lines. A stone on her neck. Why is it on her then? Get married. Marina was surprised. But the rich have their own laws. Lena was clearly well informed by someone from the campaign staff. Mr. Johnson is in business. The parents of this plague are spinning in the same sphere, and this pack of vultures sleeps and dreams of how to make friends with houses and companies. Then they will all have a very big business together. Mr. Johnson doesn't look like a boy who can be easily married. Marina shook her head doubtfully. That's why they marry him, because he doesn't look like him. They say he used to be a free bird. Don't feed me bread. Just give me a hike in the mountains with a backpack or on the river in kayaks. His father was in charge of most of the business then. But now the parent has started to get sick, harnessed the heir to this business, and demands the continuation of the dynasty. They say enough fun, time and honor to know. And since he is afraid that his son's vagabond nature will take over, he found a wife suitable, the daughter of a companion. Ours loves his father. He contradicted the healthy one, but he no longer dares to do so when he is sick. Well, they know better, of course, Marina shrugged. But even now they don't see much of a happy couple. And what will happen next, God knows. From that day on, she began to purposefully avoid the boss to avoid new misunderstandings if possible. Whether it was a long time or a short time, inexorable time inevitably brought the fateful day of rent closure. Marina sat for half a day, rewriting the figures of income and expenses in columns, in all possible combinations, and in any case, she was unable to achieve not only a surplus in the family budget, but even break-even. There was still not enough money to pay the full amount, since the search for new housing has not yet yielded results. It was necessary to obtain funds to pay for this. With a heavy sigh, Marina opened the treasured box with a spinning ballerina on the lid, in which her treasures were kept. True, they were treasures rather from a moral point of view. Their wedding rings with Boris, earrings given by Boris for their wedding day, a ring given by him after Katie's birth, and several modest jewelry of her mother. Marina sighed and after some thought pulled out her mother's pendant in the form of a golden drop. It pleasantly cooled the hand that was going to take it to the pawn shop tomorrow. It's okay, Marina thought. This payment will be enough, and then, you see, cheaper housing will turn up. And there won't be any school expenses during the holidays. I'll buy it. I'll definitely buy it. She tried not to think about how many futile promises were made in similar situations, sincerely hoping that her case would be a happy exception. The pawn shop greeted Marina with silence and some sad splendor. Large tropical palms stood interspersed with figurines, floor vases, miniature chess tables, and other utensils that were designed to help their owners get out of difficult financial situations. The randomness of objects and the sad reason for their arrival here prevented one from truly admiring them. People practically, there was none. Only a young man with a hunting rifle stood at the appraiser's counter and passionately tried to get as much money for it as possible. This is not money for such a gun, he got heated. This is not some kind of crap. This is a real Benelli, rifled for big game. You have it. They'll rip you off. Don't knock the price down so much. The appraiser muttered something under his breath, showing with his whole appearance that he still needed to find a suitable client for this Benelli. And the money he gives away immediately, not being sure how soon they will be reimbursed to him. That he will not add any kopecks was visible to the naked eye, and Marina even felt a little sorry for the guy who had fallen into some unpleasant financial hole just like her. About 5 minutes later, the guy gave in and began to stuff the slightly crumpled bills that the appraiser had laid out on the counter into his wallet, muttering through his teeth. A cheapskate, gobsec, robbery in broad daylight. Watching this scene, Marina even doubted whether it was worth it. Should she even stick her nose in here with her tiny pendant? But then the bell on the door rang, and turning around at the sound, instead of moving towards the appraiser, she threw herself into the shadow of a huge pandanus and hid behind the tub, moving a floor vase closer to it for safety. The pawnshop's fiancé didn't just enter but literally burst into it, and with one leap jumped up to the guy who had pawned a gun. "Stas, are you an idiot? What the hell brought you here? Return the money immediately and take the gun back. What kind of girl is she? It seems like she only communicates with everyone when she's in a state of scandal. I wonder, is commentonation even possible for her?" Flashed through Marina's head as she tried to settle down more comfortably in her unreliable shelter. "I hope I don't run into anything. You'll get it. Again, a bunch of troubles from who knows where." But the guy did not listen to the women's cries, shook his head like a stubborn bull, and pulled the girl away from the appraiser for a conversation, right to Marina's shelter. It became completely unbearable for her. "Milka, don't yell and don't make a scene. I urgently need money. I have no other way to get them now. The ancestor blocked all the cards, and you wanted him to give you unlimited use after you hacked the system bank client and almost completely ruined our company, pumping out crazy money from there. What was I supposed to do?" The guy snapped. "You're good at yelling because you don't know what it's like to be on the meter, and I miraculously escaped death. Oh, should I feel sorry for you, my dear?" Mila's voice, from the restrained anger, began to resemble some kind of explosive mixture of whistling and hissing. Or maybe the child should have played less and not lost in fluff and feathers. The little one needed money. And the little one forgot that her gun was wet and maybe dragged me to prison for many years? Well then give me this money yourself, sister, you or who. If I don't make the first payment now, I might start ringing the meter again. That's precisely because I'm your sister, your father, and he controls my expenses. Can't you wait a week? In a week, I'll already be a married woman. I'll be able to manage at least something. I can't. I need the money today. Stas didn't give in. You must have lost your mind back then, when instead of getting off with a fine, you killed the henchman. But at least you had enough brains to hide the gun, and now you're pulling it out the light of God at the most inopportune moment. Okay, you don't feel sorry for yourself. You're also going to kill your whole family. Do you want? If everything comes out now, the elder Morgan may easily change his mind about marrying his son on me. You know him. He has principles. And who will save the sinking boat then? Wilkinson family business? You're the one who sent it to the bottom, and I agree for the sake of the family to endure this weakling next to you all your life. And now you are going to put everything at risk. You have to look for the good in everything. Stas got carried away and began to openly mock his sister. You won't have to lie around with a mattress on mattresses. You'll find yourself a macho. And he cackled, imagining such a scenario. So, I see it's all useless. You've already had your coke? Milo answered angrily and hopelessly, and, turning sharply, headed for the exit. Stas, having waited while she was out of sight, followed her out. Marina was sitting on the floor behind the tub, completely stunned and seemingly paralyzed by what had happened. Somewhere in the depths of her consciousness, the thought had already taken shape that she seemed to have unexpectedly come closer to solving Boris's death. But the fear she had experienced and the complete unexpectedness of the information that had fallen upon her did not give her the opportunity to even move. Is everything in this world really so destructively simple? A player for whom the thought of the fact that the money he so needed for the game would go to pay the fine was so scary that the natural human fear of murder fades before it. How is that even possible? Oh he's also a drug addict. That explains a lot. And because of all this dirt her Boris died. Slightly the dulled pain exploded with renewed force, cutting into her heart and clouding her brain. Marina leaned with a burning forehead to the cold side of the vase. The appraiser went into the utility room, and she realized it was time to get out from his hiding place. Her legs were weak, her hands were shaking, but she managed to slip out into the street unnoticed. Nevertheless, she managed, having made her way with difficulty to the nearest park. Marina bought a bottle of ice-cold mineral water and sat down on the bench. The cold water refreshed her, and the decision came spontaneously. The investigator's number, who was handling Boris's case, was still listed on the phone. Marina found it with her disobedient fingers in the contact list and sent a call. No one answered the call. The beeps were long and drawn out, like an endless wait for justice to triumph. Finally, a second before the call was due to be cut off, the phone was picked up, and a muffled, infinitely tired male voice hoarsely answered. I'm listening. Mr. Parker, this is Marina Smith. 2 years ago, you handled my husband's case. Boris Smith, killed in the reserve. He did. And what? Mr. Parker, of course. I have no right to assert anything without a ballistic examination, but most likely they just handed over the gun that killed Boris to the pawn shop. I heard the conversation. Address? Came the short question, and Marina realized that the machine of justice was ready to start spinning for the second time. Having given the address of the pawn shop, she, as if half asleep, made her way home, even cooked dinner, and read The Adventures of Tom Sawyer with Katie. But as soon as she put her daughter to bed, she touched her head to the pillow and immediately fell into a deep, heavy, dreamless sleep. The alarm clock was heard with difficulty, and, having quickly had breakfast, she went to work in great excitement. Mr. Johnson's car was parked in front of the company's gates. from which he was taking out a box of champagne, mineral water, and several bottles of whiskey. He's getting ready for the wedding, Marina noted automatically to herself. Apparently, there will be some at the office too. And then stopped dead in her tracks. What to do? Now she knows what he's talking about. But he doesn't even suspect it. Should she tell him? Will he even want to listen to her? Maybe he loves that capricious witch Milo. She already caused Marina some serious trouble once. And she doesn't want to run into any more trouble. Besides, if the story about her brother's crime comes out now, the wedding can fall apart on its own. And what if it doesn't? Or will they manage to get married before everything secret becomes clear? Although, what business does she actually have with this completely alien person? At this point, Marina felt a slight pang of conscience. This stranger had recently abandoned all the works, exposed himself to the reproaches of the bride to make a holiday for her and Katie, also completely strangers to him. And now there is a direct threat to his well-being, and to his personal happiness too. It's as clear as day that he's just a walking wallet for Mila. On the other hand, in these business calculations may have some of their own nuances, completely unfamiliar to her, a mere mortal. Marina was just about to go her own way. But then Mr. Johnson noticed her. "Good afternoon. I was wondering if you were sick. I haven't seen you at all lately." He smiled at Marina. "I'm mostly in the warehouse now," she answered. Marina, unexpectedly for herself, blurted out, "Mr. Johnson, give me your word that if you will not need or be interested in what I will tell you, you will not throw me out from work, and you won't tell anyone about it." "Sounds intriguing." Mr. Johnson became serious. "Well, if this is really important information, I will try to make sure that you brought it to me did not cause you any harm." "It is important." Marina withstood her boss's gaze. "I'm just not sure if it's my business." "Well then, let's go to the office and decide there." Mr. Johnson opened the office door for Marina. A butterfly that somehow flew into the office beat her wings against the window glass. But Marina could not bring herself to move to help her. Mr. Johnson sat opposite, drawing intricate figures on a sheet of paper. By the end of Marina's story, he had been sitting like that for about 30 minutes without raising his head and already painting the 5th or 6th sheet. The pause had dragged on for a long time, and Marina didn't know how to interrupt it. Finally, she decided, "Let's let him out." "Who?" Mr. Johnson raised his uncomprehending eyes to her. "A butterfly," Marina simply smiled. "It's been hitting the glass for a long time. It's a pity, also a creature of God. Let him fly." The boss unexpectedly and somehow completely childishly smiled and went to the window, opening the shutters. "Well, I'll go. I already have a solid one today." Truancy, Marina hurried, moving a chair closer to the director's desk. "Thank you, Marina." Mr. Johnson looked openly and directly, but in the depths of his eyes, the pain of disappointment from recent discoveries splashed. "I will never forget your brave act." "What can I say?" Marina waved her hand in embarrassment and hurried to the exit. A few weeks later, the heavy doors of the district court opened, letting a focused and serious Marina out onto the street. A dark red car was waiting for her at the door. "Well, has the verdict been passed?" Mr. Johnson, who was sitting behind the wheel, asked. "Yes. Ballistic examination is a stubborn thing." Marina nodded her head. The defense had no worthy arguments. "Well, then I invite you," in Mr. Johnson's serious gaze was just itching to sparkle. "To a restaurant," Marina tried to guess. "Worse. To the registry office," he answered without a shadow of a smile. "Chief, I've been preparing myself for going to this institution for so long that I'm afraid I won't be able to do it again. And they won't be embarrassed by such a sudden change in the bride, and the statement double too." Marina couldn't resist the irony. "I don't think so, and if it confuses you, then I'll try to explain clearly that I now know everything about the best brands of rifled hunting guns." Mr. Johnson answered with an important air.